Well, would you look at this? That is a 2013 Triumph Thunderbird 1600. Now, if you look pretty carefully, you might find that that frame looks pretty familiar. That's basically just a really big Bonneville frame, fitted with a 1600cc parallel twin. It's making about 90 horsepower and about 110 pound-feet of torque the way that this thing sits. I have tuned it, but it does still have the stock exhaust. What a neat bike this is. So let's take this thing for a ride and I'll give you my impressions of this machine as we are cruising. Even with that stock exhaust, it still sounds pretty good, I gotta admit. All right, let's get rolling. So back in 2010, when this bike was originally released, these power cruisers were all in style. So Triumph decided they were going to throw their hat into the ring by taking an existing motorcycle in the Bonneville and just making it bigger, and giving it some more rake, some alloy wheels, and making it very cool, giving it a very storied name in that T-Bird. Back in the day, T-Birds were hot rods, and that's what they envisioned this motorcycle to be. And for its day, it pretty much was. Back then, a motorcycle like a Heritage Softail would be doing good to make anywhere around, say, 80 horsepower. This one making almost 90, and of course that 80 odd pound or 108 odd pound-feet of torque. Now, that was quite a lot, even by the day's standards. And this bike was a bit of a bargain too. You got the look, you got the storied history of the T-Bird name on a Triumph, and you could get it for just about $13,500. At that time, a Heritage Softail, or pretty much any Softail from Harley Davidson, was going to run you somewhere around $16,000. So what happened? Why didn't this bike take off? Why aren't they still making it today? Well, I think a lot of that had to do with, well, it would have to do with dealer availability and the dealer network. The thing is that not like Triumph was everywhere in 2010, and Harley Davidson certainly was and still is to this day. Not to mention, you know, the whole power cruiser thing, you have to admit, is pretty much Harley Davidson territory, isn't it? But that didn't matter to the folks that did see this bike for what it is, an awesome alternative. And you got to remember that for a lot of folks, the name of Triumph holds the same type of swagger that Harley Davidson does for folks in the United States. Lots of rebel heritage, lots of racing heritage with Triumph, and so a motorcycle like this just seemed to fit the general idea of where that brand was coming from. It just seemed like it was a little bit too late, though, to the party of the power cruiser, and so a lot of folks didn't take to it. But this bike doesn't have to just be a power cruiser with a 5.8 gallon gas tank. If you kit this bike out with touring stuff like the windshield and the big seats and all of that, you've got the makings for a bike that could be a pretty decent overland tour. And I know a lot of folks that have done that with these bikes. It's got plenty of power on tap. And by the way, when I say power, that 108 pound-feet of torque that I mentioned earlier is available below 3,000 RPM. So if you've got a passenger, a lot of gear, whatever the case is, you've got plenty of grunt whenever you need it to get in and around traffic. No need to downshift, just a quick twist of the throttle and you can get around pretty much anything that might be in front of you with this big machine. And when I say big, guys, this bike full of fuel is going to check in somewhere right around 730 pounds. It's definitely no lightweight, but if you compare it to the motorcycles that it would have been competing against in its day, the weight's pretty much spot on. Even by today's standards, a Heritage Softail, or again, any Softail for that matter, is going to check in somewhere in that 720 to 740 pound range. And by the way, the newer bikes, even with 114 cubic inches, 1600cc this bike translates into just shy of 100, is not making much more power than this bike. So if you think about it, this bike might have been a little bit ahead of its time. Quite a bit more power, good looks to go along with a range and a versatility. You can make this bike pretty much whatever you like. This bike obviously is a little bit more of a, a little bit more of a hot rod or power cruiser than the other bikes might have been. But you get the idea. With the right type of kit, you can have a bike that'll do pretty much anything if you're into cruisers. And it's a bummer that these bikes didn't do better than they did. I can certainly attest to not being a cruiser guy myself, but the neat thing about this particular machine is the way that it carries its weight and how well this thing handles. Even for a big bike like this, it's long, it's heavy, it's wide. I never feel like I am taxing this motorcycle at any speed. I can park this thing at 80, 90 miles per hour on the highway and feel absolutely perfectly comfortable and at home without having any type of a sense that it's ever going to get unstable on me. And so that was something that I was a bit concerned with, if I'm being honest. Again, my only relationship with any cruisers back in the day would have been a 1200 Sportster. So something like this, I thought, it's going to be big, it's going to be lumbering, it's going to be kind of boring to ride, I guess. But I was wrong. Real wrong. As a matter of fact, I've got to be kind of careful with this bike because I will 100% run out of lean angle before this bike runs out of grip. I find myself grinding the heels of my shoes or boots whenever I'm going around corners in this thing. It's just because, well, it kind of handles really well. And again, it never really feels like it's getting out of sorts, so to speak. And so that makes it kind of make you want to do some hooligan stuff with it. You hear me grinding my heel just there. So a much more capable bike, and it's a fun bike to ride just because it's always seemingly in its torque band. I mean, there's no denying that this bike makes a lot of torque, but it is always available. And when I say always available, guys, this machine, the rev range is basically 1,000 RPM to 5,000 RPM. You're probably not going to be pushing this bike much past that. No real need to. This person going to go? Okay, here we go. No need to push the bike any harder than that. It will absolutely merge with traffic, no problem. So lots of torque, lots of power. It feels so much lighter than it really is. And again, that's part of the surprising nature of a machine like this. You never really could have convinced me that a bike like this would be, I wouldn't call it light on its feet, but it's certainly not unstable. I'll also have to say that I will find myself accidentally cruising a little bit faster than maybe I should with this bike, but again, there's so much torque and it is buttery smooth. You know, this big 1600cc parallel twin. I can't really put it into words how it feels compared to other bikes, just because I don't have any real experience with a parallel twin that's this big. I don't know that there's another one out there. In fact, I think at the time, and this could still hold true today, I think for the time this was the largest parallel twin on offer. And then later on, there was a 1700cc variant of this bike made available. Made a little bit more power, a little bit more torque. Let's get this thing over on the side of the tire, roll into the throttle. It just hugs to the ground. And the thing is, I've got to be careful because it's got those low exhaust pipes. I'm using my heels as a lean indicator. Once I start tickling the heels of my shoes, I've got to hold throttle. Sorry, I don't mean to laugh, or it's just, this thing is so much more fun than it really should be. You know, a lot of times you see these cruisers and they're all butch and, you know, all of that, and this thing is just so fun. Puts me in a good mood to ride it. But that's what a motorcycle is supposed to be. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to put you in a good mood. It's supposed to be capable and reliable. And that's what I've found with this bike. I've got a little over 3,000 miles on this thing, and I gotta tell you, I can't remember really ever liking a bike or liking a type of bike less. And I've never met a motorcycle I don't like, honestly. But I never really was attracted to the cruiser. And then, you know, I get one and I go, oh, I get it now. Now I know why these guys dig these bikes so much. So, in saying all of that, God, it's a shame Triumph doesn't make this bike anymore. It'd be cool to see this motorcycle evolve. It was, and I still do believe is, ahead of its time in some ways, even by today's standards, with the power delivery and the looks and the ergonomics. God, the ergonomics of this bike are so good too. Fits like a glove. I just hate that more people can't enjoy a bike more like this. I know Triumph is big into their heritage bikes and all of that, but you know, a big, what could almost be considered, could you consider it old school? Power cruiser era motorcycle, there we go. You know, if we can get more of this, this is good. The look, the feel, the heritage of the Triumph name. Still a bit of that rebel influence from back in the day, that racing influence. Triumph, bring me a new T-Bird. Not that I would get rid of this one to get one. God, this bike is so good to ride. But back at the marina on a very pretty afternoon, a little bit breezy, a little bit blustery. What a fun bike to ride, guys. You know, it's fun for me with a bike like this to be able to enjoy it on a day like this. Just a smooth cruise, man. Just something fun. Not really any expectations of this bike. From a performance standpoint, this thing is just really good. Don't want any more power, don't need any more power. As far as safety goes, it's got ABS, twin front disc brakes with those Triumph branded calipers. This thing is just really nice to ride. You always feel confident and comfortable on this bike. But guys, post up your comments. Let me know if you've got one of these bikes or if you've got experience with one. I'd love to hear about it. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Y'all have a great one. Hope to see you on the next one.